Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 60 of the iACast. We've made it to 60 episodes, and y'all haven't told us to stop, so that's pretty awesome. I am here today with Aaliyah Dudley.
Hello.
And that's it. It's a small group today, just the two of us, so if you're expecting Jason and all of his antics, well, he is traveling, so he will not be here today, and the other regulars will not be here today as well. So it's just us y'all have to put up with, and I hope y'all are okay with that. Today,
everybody's hitting their stop buttons now.
Right, everybody's hitting the stop buttons and leaving the live stream. Just kidding. So today's episode is going to be about problem solving and using problem solving skills to use technology and to do more with tech, and really having the mindset that people have to have in today's time to be successful, and how to adopt new ideas and adapt to change as it comes. Through the years I've been a trainer, I've worked with a lot of folks, and Aaliyah has worked with some folks too in training and doing computer and technology training, and we have noticed a trend where it takes a lot for folks to learn to problem solve. And I like to say we're not teaching people to use computers. We are, but we're mainly teaching people to problem solve. Aaliyah, has that been your experience?
Yeah, I agree with that. As often as new software comes out, and as often as things change in the software that we currently use, it's important to not just teach technology. Yes, there are some basic skills that are required as a student in order to progress. For example, typing for somebody who is learning a computer, or basic voiceover gestures for somebody who's using the iPhone. But it is more about, how do I analyze what my computer is saying and deal with it? Because as trainers, we can't teach for everything. We can't show every dialogue, every screen. We can't know ahead of time what's coming in software updates. And companies, we may not like it, but companies change the way that certain things work, and they try to make things better for us. And as a result, keystrokes change, behaviors change, and we have to know how to deal with that and not let it totally rattle us and make us fall apart.
Exactly. And whenever I taught technology, the biggest things that I would see is people would learn a methodized learning structure of, I go to point A to point B to point C to get these things done. While that worked in technology through the earlier years, that doesn't work anymore, especially when you have different operating systems like the iPhone and Windows that are done two totally different ways. You have to be able to adapt. That's typically what people use, is they have their phone and they have a Windows computer for business, and maybe a laptop that's a Mac or a PC. Hopefully it's a Mac, because I still love the Macs. But it all depends on what you use. And when they went from Windows 7 to Windows 10, that was a big change. Vast change. I didn't notice too much because I went from Windows 7 to Windows 8, which was an even bigger change. Windows 8 was so radically different from 7 that people couldn't handle it, and that's why with Windows 10 they reverted to more of a Windows 7 layout. I think
I agree.
Windows 8 was more of a tablet layout.
Sorry.
It's okay. Go ahead.
And it wasn't even the blind people that had all the issues. It was sighted folks too. It was such a drastic change. I mean, what was it called, Michael? The I think the charm bar, or you had tiles. Oh God, it was so. Windows 8. I didn't use actually the initial build of Windows 8. I used 8.1, but I didn't have a computer at the time that I felt comfortable bringing up to 8. I wanted to, but I couldn't. I didn't have the JAWS to support it either. So I didn't use it. but I saw plenty of demos, and it was daunting for sure, but not impossible. And I think what happened was a lot of folks were just like, I can't do this, because they couldn't solve a problem. They couldn't go and look up how to do something. They couldn't learn as they went, and productivity went down drastically and caused a problem.
So I'll tell you the whole reason why I liked Windows 8 and Windows 8.1. It was shiny and colorful. The tiles were very vibrant, very easy to just look at and say, okay, this is this app because it's this color. I like that a lot. That was really a neat feature and on tablets it was great. It still is great with 10, the tiles. But I think it was such a drastic thing to have a full screen tile start screen instead of a start menu that it was difficult for people to get used to. And that's what our show is about today, is how do you work with change? How do you adapt to it? And I think from the people that I've learned, or that I've worked with, that have learned to adapt with change. So I think from what I've seen, the best way to work through adapting to change is enjoying the challenge of change, enjoying what it brings, the good things, and learning to embrace change as a constant. A lot of people don't like change because it means that what they're comfortable with, what they're used to, is going to be different. And I think that's what's difficult for a lot of folks, is we get so used to the things being the way they are that we are not good when they change. And the thing about technology is that it's always changing. It is in a constant state of change. Apple, I think, less so than Android or Linux or Windows. I think Windows changes even more than the Mac does, because Apple mainly updates their stuff once a year, which is useful for folks that aren't as good with change, and I think that's why they do it. But at the same time, when they do drastic changes, you get a lot of folks that are not ready for massive changes in their software.
VoiceOver, mail, rotor.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had a coughing fit.
Apple made a change to mail. It was buggy, but it didn't always stick when it was supposed to. But Apple changed mail to where you could delete message. You could flick the actions rotor to the delete or archive option and just keep double tapping. And I thought that was a great thing. And it was a change that was for the better. And they've taken it out in the latest beta because folks were complaining that it changed and trainers could not, or would have difficulty training their students on these things, because they would accidentally delete messages. My problem with that is that when you use technology, you have to expect it to change. You have to expect it to get better, and you have to, be willing to work with that. As a trainer especially, you can't just say, oh, this is going to be more difficult to teach my students. No. You need to be teaching your students how to adapt to these changes and to move on. Because as trainers, we have to be the ones that move with change. We have to be the ones that are willing to say, this is good. Unless it's buggy, then it's bad, of course. But we have to be the ones to say, okay, here's what's changed. How do we get our students to like this change, to want to use it in such a way that they can't wait to pick up their device to use what they're going to do for business, for personal use, for anything. That's what's important, is if you're going to do anything in life, you should enjoy what you're doing. And technology shouldn't be a burden. It shouldn't be a struggle. You should enjoy and have fun with what you do. And if you're not doing it, then you're not doing something right, in my view. And if you can be enthusiastic about this stuff. Whenever I was a trainer, a lot of students really enjoyed my classes because they knew that I genuinely loved the technology, and they knew that I was just as enthusiastic about it as hopefully they are to learn. And if any of my former students are listening, I hope that's how y'all felt in the class, because I really wanted people to embrace technology as if it's, going to a theme park. It's worth the challenge to get in there and to open it up and see how it works.
I agree with you. And no, I mean, you don't have to be some crazy computer, like total want to work with computers for the rest of your life kind of person, but you shouldn't fear technology because of the change that might come. And I think the trainers that complain when new changes come are the ones who teach the roadmap style of training, A to B, B to C, B to D, maybe even A to D as an entire process, but no problem solving. No, what do I do when there is no speech? What do I do when my computer appears to be completely unresponsive? What do I do when my phone locks up? What do I do? How do I solve similar problems? Nobody ever teaches these things. They teach you how it should work and not how it may break.
Right, and training is a learning mechanism, but it's also a way to really look at yourself and say, how do I approach problems? Because one of the things that I always try to tell people is you can't have a problem without a solution. It doesn't matter what the solution is. It is a solution. It may not be something you're willing to do, but there is a solution. You cannot have a problem without a way to get out of that problem. Because if you did, then you haven't looked hard enough for the solution. Even to the point of lifestyle. You got fired from your job. You have rent and you have payments to make, okay? What are the solutions to that major, terrible problem? Well, there's government assistance programs that you can get on, unemployment, different things to, work with to get you back on your feet. If you look hard enough, you'll find the solution to any problem you could come up with. If you're writing a computer program, like in my case, how do I build this complex thing? Well, probably somebody's already done it before. And that's the other thing. The internet's your friend. Other people have probably had similar problems to you, and they can answer questions. So, back before we had the internet, okay, these were bigger issues because we didn't have the education available to figure out how to solve these problems. But now we have this thing called the internet where every piece of knowledge is at our fingertips. So use it. Get on there and figure out ways to improve your situation, solve problems, and make those techniques a part of your life where, enjoy the challenge, enjoy the struggle, because that's what life is going to be. You're always going to be working through something to get to something else. So as people and people that are always learning, we always have to be willing to say, what is it that I need to do? I think that, when we look at a problem and, change, we're looking at a mindset. And, we have a mindset, like we've talked about, getting from one point in our lives to the next. And I think we have to work on, everybody has to work on how do I become a better person? How do I become successful in the way that I want to become successful? And I think we're always on that path. And I don't think we ever deviate unless we give up hope. And hope is one of the, biggest ways of solving problems, because if we lose hope, then we lose the willingness to solve problems. And our force of will is what will make it be that we can solve the problems and be as successful as we can. Because if you don't have the will to reach your goals, then you're not going to reach your goals. You have to have the will to say, I will do this, and it doesn't matter what the universe throws at me to stop me. I will make this happen. It doesn't matter how long it will take. It doesn't matter how much I have to work. I will make it happen. And you have to learn to enjoy that will. You have to learn to embrace it and make it a part of yourself to be successful in yourself and in the world.
You know, I dealt with a situation with my first university, and it has somewhat extended to this one, where accommodations aren't exactly always what they should be, and platforms aren't always accessible. As a result, it's my job. Yes, disability services should be helping me figure out the accommodations that they can provide, and my instructors should be as well. But it's also my responsibility to be looking for a solution to this problem, to be looking at different ways of accessing the same information and finding my way through, because I can't wait on slow-moving systems, because then I'll be so behind I won't be able to function or succeed. And that's a problem.
Right, and even, I think, in all situations, if you apply for a job and that job gives you some flack about accessibility or blindness, how do you solve that problem? How do you make it to where you sell yourself to be getting that job and make that job accessible? That is just as much our responsibility as it is the employer, because if we want something bad enough, we're going to get it. And I think it's not just blind people, it's not just people that are disabled or different races. Everybody goes through a point where we're just not motivated. We're just not, ready to do what needs to be done. But once you make the decision that I will use whatever power I have to get what I need done, then it will get done. And you will ride the wave of success, and it will just feel uplifting to know that you are doing what you need to do, what you want to do, and enjoying that based on the decision to adapt to change and to live a life of living your life as a person that can say, okay, the iPhone 1 was great, but this iPhone 10, now that's cool. What can I do with it? You don't always have to be the tinker type where you just want to play with new stuff, but say, okay, how did the previous phone work and what are the differences, and then connect the dots. And if you can use your mind to say, okay, I don't understand what this is, but this thing over here looked like it did before. How do I understand how this works? Well, Google it. Go online and say, how do I use this feature on iPhone 10? Where is these things on the iPhone 10 that were on the previous iPhones? Or how do I get to my documents? Because I don't really easily see it in the start menu anymore from Windows 7 to Windows 10.
Or, God forbid, Windows XP. It's dead, people. Move on.
Yes. If you're using Windows XP, you're leaving yourself open to viruses and different things because it's not supported now. And I think in 3 years...
Computer in the testing center.
I think Windows 8 or Windows Vista and Windows 7 in 2020 will not be as well. So that's rapidly coming up, folks.
Yep. And I know a lot of computers on the campus right now that are running 7. And 1 or 2 or 5 running Windows XP. But a lot of computers are running Windows 7 right now. It seems to be very popular, even still. And, as I think the tendency is to stick with what works, as far as even for our own personal use. The tendency becomes stick with what works because I'm afraid of what's coming, even though I haven't experienced it yet. And you're opening yourself up in terms of technology to possible security vulnerabilities, to different situations that could arise. Software will stop supporting old versions of operating systems because it's too much work to try to keep up with that old software. So, we have to keep moving with the times.
Yep. I mean, here's one thing. In business, I understand software requirements may keep a system on a previous version of Windows. I get that. I think there's some... Now, this is just keeping what works to the extreme. I went to a comic book store here in Austin about a year or so ago, and a friend of mine gave them their card, They swipe it, and what do I hear? A dial tone and a modem dialing, and a software handshake.
My Lord.
Didn't even use the internet. Their POS, point of sale system, not the other POS, point of sale system, dialed up to verify that the card was valid and to charge the card and then drop the connection. And I kind of had my mouth fall open and had to pick it up off the floor because I was just amazed that that thing even still works.
Wow.
So I think that goes a little beyond keeping software around that works. I think they could have easily gotten a Square card reader with a phone and just replace that whole system. You know, buy a new cash register for the cash part. You know, I understand other businesses that they have warehouse management systems or different things that require Windows 7, require Windows. I don't think anything really requires Windows XP anymore. I mean, I know there are some things, but, you know, for the most part, nothing really does. But I think for personal use, you need to try to keep up with the latest versions of software because you could change jobs tomorrow. In this economy, in our business life, we may change jobs pretty quickly. It happens. It's a fact of life. And you may go to a place that has Windows 10. And what are you going to do if you don't know how to use it? I mean, yes, if you're blind, you could apply for state rehab. But we're very fortunate to have those services, folks. You know, most people don't have that. And I think that we need to be prepared to give ourselves the training we need so that we can be successful, because that's what it's going to be about. Is we're the ones that are trying to become successful, not the people that are being paid to train us. So I think it's important for folks to realize that it's good to always be on the cutting edge. You may not need to have the iPhone 10 to be on the cutting edge. You could have the iPhone 7 or the 8 and be fine. It still runs the latest software, but at least know how this stuff works, because you may need that knowledge. You may need technical, you know, the U.S. especially, I think, is moved from more of a production-based work environment to a more technical. And so I think it's required for these kind of conversations to happen with folks to say, how do we transition from a production-based country to a technological-based country so that we can be competitively placed in work environments and actually get well-paying jobs to support ourselves and our families. Okay, let's go ahead and take a break here, and I want to talk quickly about our training services at iAccessibility. iAccessibility has training services for technology classes. We cover a vast range of courses, you know, Office, Windows, Mac, iOS, code. You know, you could learn to code through
Android
iAccessibility.
even.
Well, we'll even talk about Android. We may train on that, you know. It's a thing.
Kind of.
But, we it's usually a curse word on this podcast, but we'll say it. And
we don't train you how to use Talks anymore. Sorry, people.
No, Mobile Speak and Talks are kind of off the list. We apologize, but
no Blackberries.
They are still around, and BlackBerry messaging is still on iPhone now. But we have a competitively placed pricing schedule at $18 an hour, and it's good training. We'll pair you with a trainer. All you have to do is sign up, and we'll get you started with training. We will assess your skills with what you are asking to be trained on, and we'll come up with an assessment curriculum and figure out the amount of hours that you'd like, and we'll get started on training. So the assessment hour is free, so we can figure out where you need to be and how much training you need. And we hope that you would enjoy the program and definitely be learning a lot about problem solving in our training courses. So that does have something to do with this podcast. So we hope you enjoy the training courses, and we will see you learning out there with a trainer. All right. So, Aaliyah, do you have any tips for our listeners on how they can become better problem solvers?
I think one thing that really helped me was to, even if you read through the user manual for a product or go searching for how to do different things. Anything that you've always been curious about. Reading up on it without being concerned that you're going to break something or being afraid of trying new things. That's a big step. And trying to teach yourself something new, even if it's a tiny little application that does only one thing, if you can teach yourself how to use it, you will be well on your way to starting to learn to problem solve and think critically.
Yeah, I agree with what Aaliyah said. It doesn't matter how much education you have, even if you have lower than high school, you can still be successful in this world by looking things up, by going in and asking people questions. When you're in training in high school and different things, you always are learning critical thinking. And I can't stress enough how important that critical thinking is to, if you don't know the information, you don't know how to figure out the information, just go ask somebody or go look up online how to figure it out. And once you do that, then you are on the path to being successful. And I'm a programmer. I love to code because I like to create things. I like to see what they do once they come to life. That's very fun to me. But I don't know everything. Even whenever I was a trainer at the Chris Cole Rehab Center, I didn't know a lot of the things that my totally blind counterparts knew. I didn't know every JAWS command that they used, and that's okay. A good trainer and a good learner does not need to know everything, but you need to know how to find it. And so I think one of the reasons why the students really enjoyed my teaching was I would just say, okay, I want y'all to do this thing. Before we continue, I'm going to go look it up in the keyboard help, and I will tell y'all what it is and how to get to that keyboard help to find it yourselves. And so the students that I had could see, while I didn't know anything, I was using my problem-solving abilities to go find out what was needed so that they could learn. And I think even as a teacher, it's good to put yourself at the level of the student in front of your students to let them know we're not all that different. I just work and do what I do because I'm good at problem-solving, and I'm trying to give you the knowledge that you need to succeed and be good problem solvers so that you one day could be a trainer, a computer programmer, a musician, anything you want to be. Aaliyah, did you have any situations like that when you were teaching?
I think the situations that I ran into are very similar to yours, Michael, in that, it's about not only, presenting information to a student, but it's about showing them that they're not the only ones still learning. I learned so much from my students, even in the 8 weeks that I had them this summer, and that I never knew. And it was really cool. And learning, as far as problem solving goes both directions. And information gets passed both ways. And I think that's a great thing.
And one final thing that I will say before we wrap up is that one of the things that you have to do to really get yourself into the mindset to be a good problem solver and adapt to change is to be willing to say it doesn't matter what I've learned before, and it doesn't matter what tendencies I've gained before. If you're willing to give everything up to get everything, that's where it's going to be. Because if you can say, well, I'm really comfortable doing this thing this way all the time, if you can give that kind of thing, that way of thinking up, and look at ways, okay, if I need to be successful, I need to do this instead of what I've been doing. So if you can do that, then you're going to be successful. If you're willing to ask questions and be curious, curiosity is a very good attribute to have. Yeah, thank you. I couldn't find words. A very good attribute to your personality to have or to gain to be a good problem solver, because if you could see something and say, ooh, how does that work? How can I learn to do that? Then you're going to be successful, because curiosity is a problem solving mechanism. It lets you think critically and on your feet to solve stuff. So, those are some things that are very useful in becoming a good problem solver. And I wanted to make an announcement before we wrapped up. I am actually going to be writing a book on this topic, and it is called Finding Success in the Digital Age Through Problem Solving. And it's going to cover all of these topics. It's going to cover so much more, and I can't wait for all of you guys to read it. And I am in the process of writing that now. So that was my big announcement for episode 60, and I still cannot believe that we have made it this far. Yeah, I'm excited.
I'd like to introduce a new segment that we are starting on this podcast, and that is a bit of a question and answer section. This would relate to any sort of technological topic, any question that you might have on how to do something, and we will attempt to answer those questions at the end of each weekly episode. You can submit those questions to us in several ways. You can mention us on Twitter or DM us at iAccessibility1. You can write us a message on Facebook at iAccessibility. You can email us at feedback@iAccessibility.net, or you can leave a message on the chat system on the main page of iAccessibility.net. We look forward to seeing your submissions, and we will answer any questions that come in next week.
Yes, I'm personally very excited about this segment because it will make the podcast more interactive for you guys out there to become part of. And we look forward to seeing your questions, and we'll only have them if we see questions in our places that we look. So if y'all don't hear a question and answer, it's because none of you guys sent in questions. So we hope that you utilize this part of the show as your own, and we look forward to hearing stuff from you guys. All right, I think this has been a good show. It's been really awesome talking about this topic because I think that it's something that needs to be talked about. It needs to be a conversation that's ongoing, and you could even post questions about how to be better problem solvers in the Q&A part of the show, and we will answer those because I think it's just as important to hear about that as it is to talk about technology, because that will allow you to use your technology more effectively. So please talk about that stuff with us. We are more than welcome to talk to you on the show and provide feedback and different things. So I think this has been a great show for opening that discussion, and I think it's been really good. Aaliyah, do you have any final comments before we wrap up?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, then I guess, Aaliyah, where can people find you online?
You can find me writing articles and recording podcasts for iAccessibility. You can email me at Aleeha, that's ALEEHA, at iAccessibility.net. You can follow me on Twitter at BlindCowgirl199.
Okay. You can find me on Twitter at Mike Dowies. I'm Michael Dowies on Facebook. You can go to my website at michaeldowies.com to read all the stuff about me. And you can find me on podcasts and writing articles for iAccessibility. And you can email me at mikedowies, that's MikeDoise, at iAccessibility.net. You can find iAccessibility by going to iAccessibility.net. We are iAccessibility1 on Twitter, Facebook. You can just search for iAccessibility. We have a Tumblr blog. We have all kinds of pages. We hope to use our YouTube page one day. Who knows? All over the web. So just do a search for us, and you'll find us. We also have our app for iOS. So just search the App Store for iAccessibility, and you'll find us. And we also have a Patreon. We would ask that you guys support the podcast by going to patreon.com/iACast and leave a donation of your choice. That'll help us out. And any donations you guys can put forth would really help us stay on the air and keep bringing you guys new podcasts. So we appreciate any support you can have, and we enjoy bringing you guys these shows. If you also want to get in contact with us by email, you can email us at feedback@iAccessibility.net and send us anything about our shows, feedback, suggestions, questions, comments, concerns. No hate mail. That's not cool. So we really enjoyed doing this episode. And we want to close by dedicating this podcast to one of our great friends of this show. Mr. Buddy Brannon and his family have gone through a lot in the last few weeks. And, it's been really tough for those guys, I'm sure. And we want to let Buddy know that we are here for him and, support his family, whatever comes next. And the show really appreciates the contributions that he's put forth on our episodes. And I wanted to give a moment of silence for Buddy's family, and we are not going to do our ending theme. So I'm going to give a moment of silence, and then we will end the show. All right. Thank you, guys. That will do it. And we are going to end for today. We'll be back next week with an all-new episode. Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone.